If you're here, you already sense there's something out there, something magical and mysterious, just waiting for you to find. And you've probably already discovered it isn't as easy as just thinking happy thoughts. You're not alone. Generations of shamans, philosophers, seers, and scientists have pursued this eternal quest. Where their ideas come together, you'll find powerful tools to cultivate magic and self-mastery in your own life. Welcome to the Magic and Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Donna Woodwell. I'm a former journalist and author, a master astrologer, and a hermetic initiate, and it's my honor to be your guide. In each episode, I'll meet you at the crossroads of science and spirit, reason and intuition, to help you discover the wisdom that works for you. Are you ready? The adventure awaits. Hello and welcome back to the Magic and Mastery Podcast. This is episode 25 on stillness and desire. Now, before I get started, make sure you surf on over to the show notes at www.magicandmastery.com/podcast to check out all the references and books and other things that we mention, in addition to the links for the super special Halloween surprise I have coming up for all of you. But for now, on with the show. So here we are in Scorpio season. The sun has just entered the zodiac sign of Scorpio, the one with the reputation for being deep and mysterious and intense and all of those yummy things. And it gets that because it is a water sign. Water signs tap into how we feel on all levels, how we feel as I'm sitting here in the chair, but also how I feel about how I'm moving through the world, the emotions that I feel, the sensations that are rippling through me on all levels. And it gets that intensity from the fact that it's also ruled by the planet Mars. Now, Mars is a burning hot ember in the sky, represents all things that require strength. But here in Scorpio, that burning coal is plunged into the waters, where he continues to burn, generating steam, but he's also being tempered. Think of the sword that has been melted and shaped in the hot fires of the blacksmith's forge, then being plunged into the bucket of water to fix its shape. It's that plunging of the hot metal into the water that gives Scorpio its more esoteric meaning as the place where we are forged, where desire is forged. Now that's especially true this month because at the moment when the sun is moving into the sign of Scorpio, the moon, which talks about how we feel about any particular event, happens to be at the very end of Venus's sign, Taurus, void, of course. And so he's kind of feeling a little awkward about being in the sign that governs how we savor our physical expression. And Mars, the ruler of Scorpio, happens to be at the very, very end of Venus's other sign of Libra, which is how we gracefully move in the world by finding a way to balance and compromise with other people. So neither the moon nor Mars are in the most comfortable position, and both of them are being overseen by Venus. They're still in her territory. And Venus, at this moment, is way, way out of bounds. She's doing something very, very unique. She's getting ready to start her retrograde period of 2021. But before Venus retrograde, she often takes a moment to shake off convention and move beyond the normal bounds of her experience. And when she does that, she's like, I want what I want, and I'm not playing by anybody's rules. Now, I had to spend some time meditating on this odd tension between Venus and Mars. Now, in a way, they are a complementary pair of opposites. And that means that, think about Mars. He wants to go out and achieve that thing or get that thing. He wants to be in motion. Venus, on the other hand, is the goddess of attraction. At her best, she sits and sends out the call, and things come to her. So, in essence, their energy is both complementary. One is coming to and the other is drawing toward. And on the opposite side, they are, well, opposites. One is pushing away and one is pulling toward. And because of that, it creates a lot of tension that spins out possibilities. Whenever you have opposites that are churning the waters by the tension between them, we have all kinds of acts of creation. Now, I've been watching Venus and Mars in their dance throughout the last months. Venus has been running ahead of Mars, and Mars has been dutifully trudging along behind. But coming up very soon this year, we have a Venus retrograde. So Venus is already started the process of her retrograde by going out of bounds, and eventually she will turn around and begin backtracking. But she won't quite meet up with Mars until 2022. In fact, they spend a really interesting time in February tracing along, almost simultaneously moving through the sign of Capricorn. It's going to be visually stunning in our morning skies as the two planets are right close together for several weeks at a time, which is actually unusual. It just happens to be the way their orbits lined up this time. So it's almost as if these moments this month, we are beginning to seed those desires that we might see come to fruition when we get around to February of next year. We're just starting the process. We're tasting what's possible. And it all starts with Venus and her desire of getting slightly, way out of bounds and feeling around for what might be possible. What might be possible that we've never even thought of before. Now, Venus's out of bounds phase started a few weeks ago on October 10th, and it runs all the way through December 7th. But the maximum day is around November 6th, which happens to be just a few days after the Scorpio new moon. The Scorpio new moon, coming up on November 4th, should be an interesting taste of the entire year to come. By the time we get to that Scorpio new moon, Mars will have moved into his own sign of Scorpio, where he's much happier at the end of the day. So the burning is really starting to heat up on the interior of ourselves. That Scorpio new moon is actually in the same sign that the eclipses will be in next year. So it's giving us a taste, just a little taste of the energy that is going to pull us from deep inside. And the thing about deep energies, they are really hard to put into words. They require us to make space, to sit and wait and see what emerges. There's no easy way to pull our shadowy selves into the light, because shadows, by definition, are the parts of us that we don't want to see. It's not just the parts of us that we can't see. You know, the parts of us we can't see, like, I can't really understand what my liver is doing. I don't even know how to begin to talk to my liver. I suppose I could create a visualization and see what happens. But there are some parts of us we don't need to know. There are other parts of us that we don't want to know. And the shadow stuff is the stuff that we don't want to know. We're actively sticking our fingers in your ears and saying, la, 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 I am not listening to you. And so since the energy of this moment is caught up with the shadowy energy that's being revealed next year, I'm suggesting for myself and for anybody else who happens to be listening that maybe now is the time to begin carving out some space to sit and consider our sense of desire. What is desire? What do I want? What do you want? What do you want to create from your world? And allow it to be still and witness it. And I promise you, if you can be still enough to let it vibrate with you, you might learn something incredibly profound about what's motivating you and all of your actions in the world. And that process starts now. And maybe we get a little bit of a boost this month because what's happening between the Scorpio new moon on the 4th of November and the full moon that's coming up, that's actually an eclipse, on November 18th and 19th in the coming month, is a fixed T-square. So let's break this apart. Fixed means that all of the signs are in fixed zodiac signs. And fixed energy likes to hold things in place. It fixes things. It keeps them still so that we can actually make things manifest. When things are constantly in motion, it's hard to stabilize. So we have some fixed signs in the zodiac. So a fixed T-square is a potent time to do some holding of energies so that we can see things more clearly. And involved in this fixed T-square, on one hand, we have Mercury and the Sun and Mars. We'll all be in Scorpio by then. And on the other side, we have the planet Uranus in the sign of Taurus. We all know that Uranus is not exactly known for keeping things stable, but he's in an earth sign. So Uranus himself is bound into manifestation right now. He's shaking the ground on which we stand. And between them is the most stabilizing planet of them all, Saturn, trying to hold position in Aquarius. Coming back to the title of this particular podcast episode, we have Stillness and Desire. And Mars and Venus are bringing the desire, but this fixed energy is just amplifying the need for stillness. Because if you can't sit with your desires and witness your desires, they are going to be driving you to take all kinds of actions, many of which you may not even be conscious of doing. So if you want to take those first steps into doing potent and profound shadow work, the first step is always going to be slow down. Slow down, be still, and watch what is happening within you and outside of you. There's no reason to take quick action. The true rewards of all of the energy from this month are going to come from being still. From being still and allowing yourself to go even more deeply into yourself than you may be entirely comfortable with. And that's okay. The point is not to be comfortable. When we are in Scorpio season, Scorpio could care less about our comfort. That's why the moon is in fall. In Scorpio, the moon likes to be comfortable. It would rather be on her squishy, comfy chair and eating bonbons. So would Venus from that fact. But Scorpio is all about going into the depths of ourselves and being brave and accepting what we find in the darkness and maybe even making friends with some of the monsters there. Sometimes those monsters are just imperfect reflections of our deepest desires that we have pushed away because we don't want to see them. Hence why making friends with your monsters can be incredibly illuminating. And once you have them back on your side again, you have unlocked an incredible amount of power that can drive you forward into whatever you want to manifest in your world. So this month has an incredibly powerful potential waiting for you to unlock, but it's not the kind of unlocking that you do by chasing it down and forcing it to the ground and trying to use your harsh control. It's the kind of unlocking that evolves from within you. It opens like a lotus when you are willing to be still and sit with it. Allow it to vibrate through you, no matter if it makes you uncomfortable or anxious or whatever else comes up. You just let it arise and then let it go. and see what arises next. And in this process of witnessing what you are experiencing within will come some powerful revelations that may take you all of next year to truly figure out. But the process starts here. I know, this is a lot of deep and ephemeral stuff that's hard to pin down. I'm a practical girl. I'm a Virgo after all. And when someone says, be still and sit and wait, I'm about ready to jump out of my own skin. I'd pretty much rather do anything but that. And so in my own desire not to be still, I reached out to a friend of mine, Kathy Beal, who's got her own astrology practice, an amazing book that she's written that's out there, and her own podcast that is on Om Times, where she gives lots of useful advice about astrology on a week-by-week basis. And so I started talking to her about all this stuff coming up next year, because next year is a strange year. We have been coming out of the last 10 or 15 years of astrology where there have been major astrological alignments that every astrologer can point to as holding the essence of the year. And hundreds of bloggers have been writing about more or less the same thing. Well, 2022 is a little unique in the sense that there aren't those kinds of major aspects, slow-moving aspects between outer planets that astrologers have been talking about for a long time. And so it's a lot harder to pin down the story. It's nebulous and it's hidden in the details. But I think it's waiting for us to come to that point where we recognize that in order to change the world, the change starts from within and spreads from that still point in the center outward. And in order to do that, we have to stop our cravings. We're just coming out of this year of pandemic, 18 months of pandemic now, and it's not even entirely over yet. And many people got a hard pause in their lives, go home to lockdown and sit there. And it happened so fast for some people that the whiplash created its own traumatic experience. There wasn't a lot of space to process what was happening, just a yearning for it to not be happening, a yearning to find a way to connect to people out there, because that's what felt like was suddenly removed for our lives. And I'm not sure we all got the fullest chance to experience what it was to connect to ourselves. Or if we had those moments, we haven't yet had the chance to integrate what that connection, that deep connection means as we are moving through that larger world. And I think that's what some of this coming year is going to be about for us, is figuring out how to bring those deep insights of self, those deep insights about what we desire out in the world in a way that allows us to fulfill our desires, but other people the freedom to fulfill their own as well, without judgment and without fear. And so in my conversations with Kathy, one thing led to another thing, which led to another thing, and we decided we were going to team up and do our forecast for 2022 early this year. We're going to do it in conjunction with Halloween. And that's the witchy New Year for people who aren't familiar with the traditional witchy pagan calendar that a lot of groups use. And that this may be the true turning point of the new year, especially this year, because the seeds that we're going to be uncovering in the coming year are being planted right now. And so, in honor of the Halloween New Year, we're inviting all of you to come to our 2022 forecast and ritual panel for how you can tap into those magical potentials of 2022, give you a little sense of the ground ahead, plus what's even more important is some rituals and spells and ceremonies that you can do for yourself to help you make the most of the energies that are ahead. We called it 2022 onward through the fog, because there is a sort of fogginess to the experience of next year. But that fog is simply to make sure we're not relying too much on harsh control. We're allowing our imagination to have room to expand. So if you surf on over to the show notes for this little episode, you will find a link for our webinar. You are all invited. In addition to the webinar, we'll also be giving you currently the workbook is 25 pages. I'm sure it will be longer by the time we are finished it, as a gift to you to help you make the most of the new year as well. With lots of things that you can work on for yourself and written instructions for all of the ceremonies and rituals that we are suggesting as a great way to put the energy of the new year into practice. I'm also thinking about these energies a lot now, not just what they mean for the world, but also what they mean for me personally and what they mean for magic school. I know for me personally, it makes me come back to the question of how do we take the bits of ourselves that we're not comfortable with, that feel like they're running away, the parts of ourselves that are afraid to move forward. I sure have a lot of them, just like everybody else does. And how do you love them enough to be able to help them take gentle steps to move forward? Fortunately, I have the chance to start going to the gym this year, and reigniting my yoga practice has been tremendously helpful for me because it requires me to be still in a concretely physical way. And I'm the type of person that is such a fidget in my daily life that actually having someone else sitting with me to be still for an hour is incredibly valuable to me. So I have found a way that works for me. Everyone's going to find their own ways that work for themselves, whether it's through journaling or practices like the Book of Shadows that comes with Magic School, or running, or walking your dog, or even spending some time under the stars. Whatever allows you to cultivate that stillness so there is some space for ideas to percolate within is going to benefit you well as we move into the new year. As far as Magic School goes, 2022 is going to become the year of alchemy. It's just a twist of fate that the way all of the programming worked out is I actually finished all of the lectures on magic and theurgy and divination that I had planned for my first round of lectures. All the alchemy ones got left until last. And you know me, Virgo, it's really simple for me to berate myself that I didn't do them on time or something else. But now that I see what's coming ahead in 2022, I'm really grateful that I'm going to have a year-long deep dive into the alchemical process to hang on to. Because at its core, alchemy teaches us how to transform, how to transmute all of the leaden and heavy bits of ourselves into something spectacular. And all of the processes and tips and techniques that we can use to help us get there. Now, on the outer level, those alchemical processes represent different kinds of chemical transactions. But there is a corollary, a symbolic corollary for each one on the inner world that teaches us how to separate and reunite different parts of ourselves in different ways, so that in the separation and coming together, we begin to turn and recreate something new in the process, which is what comes back to the whole Mars and Venus thing. Because Venus and Mars are all about separating and coming together, and separating and coming together. That's what gives them their potency, and that's what also fuels the alchemical journey. So even as I might berate myself in individual moments of, oh, I didn't do that right, oh, I need to fix this, oh my God, I'm behind on everything, when I look back at the pattern that is being woven over time, I realize, the timing was perfect. Even though I didn't mean it to be perfect, it worked out to be perfect anyway. And I think there's a lot of that to be had over the coming year from this moment and into the next months, where whatever we have been planning and berating ourselves for not getting on top of, or whatever else self-talk is going through our heads, we come to realize that our timing is always perfect when looked at from a different point of view, a more advanced point of view. Maybe not advanced, that's not quite the word. A higher point of view, for lack of a better term. And from that more objective place, we can see that everything is playing out in a way that will get us to someplace amazing at the end of the day. And we all need that kind of hope right now, given what you might be seeing when you turn on the television and look on the news or look at the world around you, where things can seem pretty bleak on so many levels. So I'm excited to be able to go on this journey with all of you over the coming year. And I'm going to continue going to my yoga classes and creating space for stillness so I can watch the movement of desire and how it is shaping my life. And I hope you will spend some time doing the same thing, because I think the keys to our future and to building a world that we want to live in comes with spending some time and opening those doors to understanding what desire is and using it more skillfully to build the life that we want to live. And with that, we can come back to our experiment for this episode. And it seemed appropriate to give you something from my renewed yoga practice that fits right into the Halloween season. Why don't you spend a few minutes trying out corpse pose? Now, corpse pose is what you typically do at the end of yoga class. Once you've done all the stretches, you lay down flat on your back and completely relax, like a corpse, just like it sounds. And if you were to take this even further, you could imagine the various parts of your body beginning to decay and the flesh and bones falling away and coming to complete rest as your bones and sinews blow away in the dust. But that might be a little advanced for some people. Why don't you just start with the simple being completely relaxed, just for a moment, and looking for that place of stillness. Even the act of laying down and checking in with yourself and asking how easy, or maybe not so easy, it is to be still can give you a sense of where you're starting from. Because if you can't find stillness within, if you can't begin to create space where you can witness your desires without acting on them, and that includes whatever thoughts you have running through your head, those are kinds of desires too. It's difficult to find a way to move past them into what comes next. So try that out for yourself. And before you go, don't forget to check out the show notes at www.magicandmastery.com/podcast. Of course, we've included timestamps and links to other things that I've mentioned during the episode to make it easier to find just what you are looking for. And that includes the epic conversation that I'm going to be having with Kathy Beal about all of the events that you might expect in 2022, including some magical solutions to the energies that it might bring. And so, thanks for tuning into this episode of Magic and Mastery with me, your host, Donna Woodwell. Of course, I love getting your feedback because it helps me figure out what makes you excited and jazzed so I can bring you more of the good stuff. So it would mean so much to me if you take a moment to rate and review the podcast. And if you liked it, why don't you share it with a friend?